and about 2 years ago, our forefathers brought forth in this country a new law conceived in fairness and dedicated to the proposition that all men and women deserve a safe workplace. Now you see what movies I've been seeing lately. We've made a lot of progress in those 41, 42 years. As you all are aware, the fatality rate has dropped from 18 to about 3.5 per 100,000. An amazing drop, but as many have noted here, we're still losing 13, 14 workers every single day in this country. It's a tragedy that we really should not be living through, we should not be putting up with. And it doesn't need to happen. We all know that these kind of fatalities and the injuries we see are preventable. I'm going to go through some of the things that we've done over the last 4 years. Mostly I'm going through these things because these are, I think a lot of these are important advancements. In fact, a lot of these ideas we got from you. A lot of these are important advancements that not only need to be used every day in the workplace, but if they're not used every day in the workplace, we're not going to be able to hold on to them. We want to take the accomplishments we've made and really institutionalize those into the American workforce. Some of the most obvious, we've managed to hire more inspectors. We have raised fines. We haven't raised our legally mandated fines, but we have adjusted our administrative reductions so the effective level of fines have gone up. I mean, the average penalty for a serious violation of the Occupational Safety and Health Act, one that could cause serious injury or death, was only about $1,000 when we came in. We've managed to double that to about $2,000, still way too low, but nevertheless we're making progress on that. Cutting corners on safety and health will just not be tolerated in this country. It's against the law, it's against, again, basic human rights, which are that every worker, again, has a right to a safe workplace. We've been tackling a number of hazards that, where we don't have standards. Workplace violence, one area kills more people. Homicide kills, depending on the year, has ranged over the last 10, 15 years between the second and the fourth leading cause of death in the workplace. This is something we're trying to tackle under our general duty clause, and we've been having more and more cases. We have a new national emphasis program that deals with nursing homes, and we're really focusing on ergonomics in nursing homes. We have resurrected fall protection requirements for residential construction. Just this week, I think we announced finally, after a good 15 years of working on this, that flight attendants will now be covered under OSHA protections for a number of different hazards. We have what's known as a severe violators enforcement program for those employers who have shown complete recalcitrance to abiding by the laws of this land, to protecting workers. We now have basically a list. If you get on that list, you are subject to repeat inspections and more monitoring. Now, no worker who is thinking sanely is going to get involved in a health and safety matter in his or her workplace if he or she is afraid of being fired or retaliated against. It's been something that, quite frankly, we have not done a very good job at over the years. We have been, and we are right now, in fact there's a meeting going on in New York right now, been very active in disaster response. And this has not been an easy situation. This is one of the areas that I think we've made major accomplishments since 9/11, certainly since Katrina, but there's still a lot of work to be done in the area of disaster response, especially in terms of worker protection. With our voluntary protection program, this is a program for the kind of the best out there companies. We have kind of changed somewhat of the focus on that. Instead of just focusing on increasing the numbers of the voluntary protection program members, we are focusing really on the integrity of that program. We had too many cases in past years where workers were killed at VPP sites, and nothing was really done about it. Where we had VPP sites that had willful citations that were still members of VPP, and these are things that that shouldn't be. And we decided that if we're going to have VPP, it doesn't really matter how many members are part of it. if the program really has no integrity. There are other areas where we haven't been as successful. One of those is certainly in our standard setting process. But the important thing to understand is that the mission of OSHA is to protect workers, or to assure the protection of workers. We do that primarily by enforcing OSHA standards. If we don't have standards, if they're very old standards, if we don't have standards for obvious hazards, we can't enforce the law as well, and we can't essentially do our jobs. And as I generally am not afraid to say, unfortunately, for the most part, OSHA standards are the laughing stock of the world. You look at our chemical standards. We have about 500 chemical standards that we regulate. Almost all of those are based on science from the 1950s and 1960s. And our regulatory process is also, quite frankly, kind of a joke. There was just a GAO study, that Government Accountability Office study, that showed that the average time from beginning to end for OSHA to issue a standard is 7 years. Well, I'd be happy if it really was 7 years. That was averaged over the last 20 years, I think, and it used to be a lot faster than it is now. Now we're lucky to get something out in 10 or 12 years. Do standards kill jobs? Well, we know they don't. If you look at some of the past OSHA standards, they not only protect workers, and we can see that the cotton dust standard, which virtually eliminated cotton lung disease, grain handling standard that reduced grain bin explosions by 42%, the excavation and trenching standard that reduced fatalities in trenches by 35%, bloodborne pathogen standard that virtually eliminated the incidence of hepatitis B in our American workplaces. So OSHA standards don't kill jobs, they actually stop jobs from killing workers. And every study that's been done, the costs and benefits of OSHA standards have found that not only has the industry overestimated the cost of the standards, and generally what you find is the industry always overestimating the cost of standards, always predicting that OSHA standards will destroy the regulated industry, if not bring down Western civilization. So the studies that have been done have found that not only does industry overestimate the cost, but even OSHA overestimates the cost of standards, because what we found is that what OSHA does not take into account is the fact that OSHA standards actually push technology. We call them technology forcing, so that we don't take into account, and sometimes we don't take into account because we can't see what kind of changes there will be in an industry when OSHA issues a standard. A number of other standards we're working on: combustible dust. We're working on a standard to deal with infectious diseases, the rest of infectious diseases, confined spaces, and construction. But it doesn't matter who you have as Secretary of Labor. It doesn't really matter who you have operating OSHA, if you don't have the public behind you, if you don't have a movement behind you pushing that. There has to be such a movement in this country that at least sends a very strong message and overwhelms, and I don't just mean equals, I mean overwhelms the arguments that we keep hearing about this regulatory tsunami that's going to kill jobs in this country. We know that's not true. Real economists, I think, know that's not true as well. We need to make sure, and especially I'm enlisting you here, I think you understand it already, but you all need to go out there and educate. You need to educate our policymakers, you need to educate our politicians, you need to educate our elected leaders, our bureaucrats, about what goes on in American workplaces, about the lives lost in American workplaces.